Here. Welcome, everyone, to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 40, a very special episode with possibly the largest guest we have to date. Welcome to everyone who is joining us on the stream today, who also is joining us later on for the podcasting portion. The Shitlord Preachers podcast, which is basically where my friend Brook Potter and I, joining me from the UK, myself here in Minnesota, we basically we're both former preachers and now reformed shitlords. Basically, we've come together since middle of 2017. We've been doing a weekly show, semi-weekly in the beginning, but now we're sticking to the schedule. But thanks everyone for joining us. But how's it going today, Brook?
It's going well, Amos. Always good to be back on the show. 40th episode. Wow, we're actually getting pretty good at this, man. It's building up, you know. Just for our listeners and the people on the podcast joining us. Yes, my name is Brook Potter, originally from the twin island nation of Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Moved out to the UK at the end of 2016, and I've been making a life for myself out here. And Amos is graciously sharing his spot with me today on his show, where we're going to be having a very interesting discussion with two gentlemen of which I am a huge fan. So I'm very excited for today's interview.
I mean, I guess they're all right. I'm just kidding. No. So this was we're joined today by the Jeff and Bill, or at least what they're known as, the Asian Capitalists on YouTube. How's it going, guys?
Hey, man. Good to be here. Thanks for having us on. You want to introduce yourself? Everyone's doing an self-introduction.
Introduce yourself real quick. We'll get into the more details in a sec. So.
All right, I'm Bill. I'm a former 4chan refugee, currently a citizen of Kyrgyzstan. I hold a position in the University of Kyrgyzstan, and I'm Dr. William. I'm also known as Dr. William T. Science.
Brilliant.
I don't believe I'm an official citizen of Kyrgyzstan yet. I'm more on working visa. I visited in 2014, and I decided to stay for a while to learn the culture. Kind of get acclimated.
I'm currently sponsoring his work visa, and hopefully one day we can get him some sort of permanent residency, and someday maybe even citizenship.
Yeah. Just claim for asylum, man.
It was easy when I got in. I was a former 4chan refugee. It's easy to get in.
Yeah. Refugee crisis, man. It opens all the doors.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. But before we kind of get into, I know there was a couple topics we're touching on. We did about a half hour before the show. And we started touching on all sorts of things that I really wanted to reserve for the show itself, because I think there'd be a lot of awesome stuff we could really get into. But I wanted to kind of get, I guess, a background, because you guys had met together. Like, I think your channel, I mean, I know you guys don't touch specifically on libertarianism, but you guys, I mean, would you guys
once in a while
right, you do touch on it, but would you guys identify as libertarians?
Of course, yeah.
What is that your gender pronoun?
Yeah.
That is my gender pronoun. I would like you to use it all the time. Alternatively, you can use your majesty or your highness. I'm also accepting of those.
Oh, ye exalted one.
Your eminence is also okay.
There's a nice ring to it.
So,
assistant to the God Emperor.
No, the avatar of the God.
Avatar.
Avatar just sounds better.
Now, because it's interesting, you guys kind of, I mean, Brook had referred me to their channel, and ever since then became a fan, and kind of liked the way you guys kind of touched on different topics from not kind of the mainstream Libertarian Party, or even like some of the people who maybe aren't as mainstream, just taking a more edgier look at certain topics. I know.
Actually, initially, when we first started planning to do this channel, we were gonna do libertarian stuff. We were gonna
we were gonna be a strictly libertarian channel called Daily Sodium.
I saw that.
And property rights, that kind of stuff.
But we eventually, there was a lot of scripting involved in doing those videos, and we found out we were really bad with scripts. We can't.
The writing was fine.
But the acting, well, he was okay, but my acting is dog shit terrible. Like, even if once he wrote a script, he writes movie scripts sometimes. He made a role for me who's just me. Like, I didn't have to act, and it turned out dog shit terrible.
So first day of filming, we were filming for about 5 hours. It was a 3-minute video, probably.
We got nothing done. It was just we wasted 5 hours. We set everything out. We set up all the lights. We set up all the cameras, and then we got nothing. We were
struggling with our lines. We couldn't remember our lines. We decided to take out a huge whiteboard and write out our lines, and then we were squinting to try to read what was on the whiteboard.
And we're Asians, it looked like on camera the whole time we just had our eyes closed.
And this was a live shot. It was before the animations.
That wasn't live, but like that's how we changed to our current format, which is just us shooting the shit.
Yeah. Actually, between takes, we got into a conversation about the culture, like how the culture
and
then we recorded that, and it was like, hey, this is actually pretty good.
This is actually better. Like, and it involved less work. Yeah. Like, we didn't have to set up any cameras, we didn't have to do the lights, and we didn't have to waste 5 hours on and not have anything to show for it.
And actually, for that matter, even our first videos on our channel, if you go back, they're still there. They're still dog shit terrible.
Yeah. But you know, we got better.
I think that's a big part.
I think I was always great.
That's a big part. I think why I really like you guys' content, because like that's Brook. So Brook and I, knowing each other, we had a lot of conversations and such, and that's kind of where we were going. Was let's do a show where we're just talking about anything. Because we were like, we're going to stick, libertarian, and then start talking about everything.
It all went to shit.
I mean, there's an episode where we talked about internet thoughts in Saudi Arabia and the certain practices that definitely take place there.
Well, that's a dangerous career. If they find you out, it's not just iOS.
Right.
Taking your money, you're gonna be like, I don't know, stoned or something.
Yeah,
right. But we talked about a lot of different things, but it's but I want to know, like, I guess you guys share a little bit, like, how did you guys, like, when did you guys meet? What led to, like, between you guys meeting and becoming friends, and then leading up to like creating the channel? Like, what inspired that?
Well, it was actually really funny because we didn't know, when we first met, we didn't know we were both libertarians. Yeah, probably. I chalk it up to this whole culture where you don't, if you're not on the left, like straight up on the left nowadays, you don't talk about your political affiliation.
Right.
But we actually first met each other playing pool. He used to run a pool meetup. And I joined because I wanted to get better at my pool game. And I think a year into just coming to the meetup every Friday, he said, "Oh, I'm not next week. We're not doing next week." I'm like, "Oh, so what's happening?" Like,
is there an echo?
No, we're fine.
Oh, okay.
And Jeff was like, "Oh, I'm going to a libertarian meetup," and I'm like, "I'm a libertarian."
Long lost brother, embrace me.
So that's when we got a lot closer. Like we were somewhat close friends before that, but we got a lot closer after that. We became very close friends because, like, come on, how often do you like encounter another libertarian in Marxist territory in real life?
Exactly.
And we and this whole channel also came out. I feel like, I don't know what your take on our origin story is, but I feel like it's because a lot of time we would grab a couple of guys, would go eat after playing pool, and we would just shoot the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And right. I'm like, no, we should record this and just put it on YouTube, because there's plenty of people who don't have friends, and they could just live vicariously through our conversation.
Right. Yeah, that is actually where the idea to make a YouTube channel started. but we never really followed through with that.
Until one day he decided, hey, you've got all these like arguments against libertarian arguments against the progressives. Why don't we try to do a series called Daily Sodium on it? And there were lines. We didn't do well with lines, but we've been over that.
Yeah.
So it's that was the past. It's time to live in the present.
Was there anybody who inspired you? Were you all watching YouTube content? Was there anybody that you liked and kind of got you to go ahead and do something?
It seems like, ages ago now, like the people who were popular 3 years ago, Milo Yiannopoulos, Dave Rubin started to show at that time. Sargon was just getting popular. Stefan Molyneux still had like 100,000 subscribers or something. But at that time, those were the people that got me into this political YouTube thing.
For me, it was completely different. All I watched YouTube for were my anime waifu videos and and StarCraft too. Yeah, but for me, it was I've been fighting the culture war for 10 years.
Really? Even before? What were you doing before YouTube then? Well, how were you fighting them in your bedroom?
That's incorrect. It's 2019. I've been fighting the culture war for 11 years, since 2008.
So what happened in 2008?
When I used to, Alma was mentioning. We mentioned the pickup artists. Because I formerly ran with a group of them before I got old and fat.
Dude, I'm older than you, and I still run with them.
I used to hang out with a lot of frat boys back in the day, and 2008 was when SJW, this progressive agenda started seeping into real life for me. Like we got all these guys who used to be fun and cool, and we would make politically incorrect jokes to each other. We go out, have fun, pick up girls, look at my beautiful woman, and talk about it. And all of a sudden, it was it wasn't cool to do that anymore. And I'm like, you know what? This is affecting my everyday life, and I'm not gonna be fighting the culture war 24/7. But whenever I see a chance to, I don't know, do my part in defending masculinity, I will.
Right.
So the beginning was very tough because I was the only one doing it. Everyone had this attitude of, oh, they're not here to take away our culture. They're not here to take away male space. They're not here to take away your hobbies. And lo and behold, they were here for everything. And I was like that guy standing on the fucking soapbox, waving a Bible around, yelling that the end is nigh. But nobody was listening until, like, everything was. Until we've handed away the keys to the kingdom, and let the enemies into our doors.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. And I mean, you lost the fun with your friends. Jeff, did you see the same thing happening? That the SJW thing was coming?
No.
No, it was totally outside. You didn't see the progressivism.
Gamergate by the time I realized. Oh shit.
Okay.
I would say though, like one of the people who spent 11 years yelling, the SJWs are coming, the SJWs are coming. The only thing that great about the situation getting worse is people. You were alone in the beginning. Now there are people standing by you.
There's an army fighting back on this. Yeah,
you're not that guy, like crazy man standing on the street corner anymore. Like, and it's psychologically it's a lot. It feels a lot better, even though the situation itself has deteriorated.
Agree. I mean, just a quick note on that, and then we'll proceed. Is even in my home country, which is Trinidad and Tobago, I don't know if you guys know where that is, but it's a small island off the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean. And this garbage has reached there, which is, they're like 10 years behind the rest of the world when it comes to most things. Yeah. And I was just on a podcast with a guy called Kirk Megu, And he was interviewing people talking about this SJW thing and how it's coming into the academia and all the feminism stuff. And it really is infectious. So it's reaching every part of the globe, and we need more people.
Is it just happening? Is it just starting there? Or is it already?
It's early. It's early. I mean, Caribbean culture doesn't have. It's very patriarchal. We have carnival, and it's very skimpy girls and stuff. You're not going to shut that down, but you're starting to hear the whisperings about race and marginalized groups and LGBTQIFGHI whatever groups, and that's starting to come to the fore. And we just passed.
I think they use the white man as the boogeyman as well. Straight white.
Well, yeah, we are the minority, so we're like 1% of the population in Trinidad.
Yeah.
So we've always been the devil, right? That hasn't changed. But yeah, it's becoming more vocal. They're speaking about against the multinationals and all these. It's rumbling, and you can see it's going to cause.
Do you think because us in North America, we got hit first. We're the first to fall, and then it was Europe. Europe just it hit Europe later than North America, but Europe really fell fast.
Yes.
But do you believe that you could people in Trinidad could who sees the writing on the wall, they could say, hey, we don't want any of this shit. Like, look what it did to North America. Look what it did to Europe. We don't want any of this shit. Like, do you think it's preventable?
I think there's still a lot of traditional culture in the country. So there is a much bigger conservative voice out there. These people are protesting the decriminalization of homosexual marriage, for instance. It used to be a crime, and they've just decriminalized it, haven't made it legal, and there were big protests and stuff like that. So there is very much a religious conservative streak. So I don't think it's going to get a lot of traction, at least not with my contemporary and the older generation. We're worried about the youth in the university because that's where it's going to come from.
Well, the good thing about it the good thing about staving it off now is that if the progressive fall, globally, if the progressive movement falls, then the process in Trinidad will stop.
Yeah, I believe so. We're hoping.
Because this thing is entirely people looking at other countries, it's kind of like America looking at Europe. Oh, isn't free healthcare great? Except it's not free. But
exactly, quite right.
But
so we have a schedule. What's the schedule again? There's a schedule. Amos?
We're there's not much of a schedule. I mean, I know we talked about a couple of things you wanted to get into there, but I guess I wanted to ask you about, how the channel really took off. Like, where did you guys because you guys, you did the daily sodium, you did the lines, that wasn't working. And then you started doing a lot of just basic shooting the shit and doing videos. When did you guys start to realize really that the channel was going to take off?
It happened overnight, pretty much. We started the year last year with 300 subscribers. We were thrilled that we got to 300. And by summer, we had 10,000. And wow. most of those subscribers actually came from one video. It was our video about what are millennials doing in their 30s. Overnight, that kind of took off. That had been out for 3 months by that time, actually. And suddenly,
for some reason, it started trending. Yeah. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Were you guys putting tags on it or anything, or it was literally just sitting there?
It was sitting there for 3 months,
with no changes in tags. Well, he deals with the tags, so I assume.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird. And then what was our next big hit? It was
people went back and started sharing, I think, why we as Asians hate the progressive left.
Yeah. And then it was just
the NPC meme was later that year.
Yeah, somehow it took off. And if you're asking us how we took off, that my answer is I don't know.
I guess I was more so trying to when did you kind of get a feeling like, hey, this is going somewhere and we could actually make this?
Not until that point. I don't think we really thought it was.
Yeah, it wasn't until summer when we realized that, hey, this is gonna take off.
Yeah.
And I originally started doing this with no expectations. This is just something fun I'm doing with my buddy. This.
Right.
Yeah. And whether or not like one person sees it or like a million people sees it, I was going to continue doing it. Yeah. But obviously, I want a million people to see it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, how long was it between that video? No, you said 3 months, but how long was it between starting the channel?
2 years. Yeah.
2 years. So it's 2 years before it just shot up out of nowhere.
Yeah. And although you could say for the first year we weren't really doing anything, because it was a lot of like continuous. That 5 hours with nothing to show for it, that didn't just happen once.
That still happens nowadays. We still record a lot, and a lot of stuff doesn't make it to the air.
It doesn't feel like wasted time though. Like we were gonna talk anyways, whereas we were back in the old format. It really felt like we weren't having fun. Like we weren't just shooting shit. It was trying to make a product and then not having a product at the end.
Right. Well then, Brook, we just need 6 more months and we'll take off too.
I mean, since you guys have gotten this big, has there been a change in terms of recognition or anything like that? Have you all been recognized on the streets? A bigger channel started reaching out to you? Anything like that?
We've been recognized a few times.
Well, I think I've been recognized more times than him because look at this. Look, I had to get that. Just give everyone a chance.
Yeah, no one would recognize him otherwise.
Look, I just look too good. Like if I didn't get old and I didn't get fat, nobody would have had a chance. I just have to level the playing field voluntarily.
I mean, did you any bigger channels though reach out to you guys?
Zach King, I guess, would be the biggest.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk to him again.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking to him this Friday again.
We talked to him earlier, late.
And I knew the philosopher actually before because I'm one of her Patreon supporters, so I knew her before we took off.
Yeah, that was your first interview.
We had Foe with the Queen of the Foes.
that was your first guest. Am I right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was your first guest.
Except we were more. It was more like we were her guest because we might meet her.
Yeah, but on our channel, she's our first guest.
It's awesome.
So we as the two of us got recognized. One said Jordan Peterson. We went to Jordan Peterson. There's a video about
that. Was the first time we got recognized
by. That was especially rare because our demographic is mostly men, and it was two young women.
Yeah,
recognized us. They're like, "Hey, it's Asian capitalist." I'm like, "What?"
I'm just imagining you guys looking like Wayne and Garth, like going out there, like, just hey guys. But now. I guess, I mean, did you have any other questions about the origin, Brook, that we should go over, or do you want to?
No, I would just like to ask, is there somebody that you want to interview for your channel?
Of course, well, I would like to one day have the clout to interview our Lord and Savior, Ron Paul.
Yeah. And also our Canadian Lord and Savior and future Prime Minister, Maxime Bernier.
Mad Max.
Good answers. Good answers.
Or, like Saint Nigel Farage.
Okay,
that'd be nice.
Good man.
Yep.
Good man.
I don't think we've picked anyone yet, have we, Brook?
Dan Bilzerian.
And I also have one that's not quite related to the stuff we're talking about, but I would like to be able to talk to Jeremy Clarkson one day.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yes.
I would like to shake his hand, but only the hand he punched Piers Morgan with.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, man. That was a beautiful thing.
But I know one of the things. So everyone is watching the listening to the podcast probably doesn't know that these guys are Asians. Believe it or not, but
like Asian capitalists. Well, like, what do you expect?
Well,
they were expecting, and Brook would understand this. What they were expecting Pakistanis.
Yes, yeah. I'm in the UK,
right? A couple of Asian men.
That's right.
No, but one of the things I know you guys really wanted to kind of go into, because you guys have you guys done a video touching on any of this with the relationship between China and Taiwan?
We talked about Xi Jinping in one of our videos.
We've actually talked about that several times, but all of that turned out to be garbage and it was never released.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
no pressure from the Chinese government. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Forget Russian bots. We've got a couple of Chinese bots here.
Yeah. Look, the real villain is Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But actually, nobody actually really talks about Chinese bots, but Chinese bots is a really, really big thing. There's a whole thing called the 50-cent army that is funded by the Chinese Communist Party.
Because they cost 50 cents. That's
50 cents per comment or something. But they go around the internet, even the Western internet, commenting and basically doing propaganda for the Communist Party.
Like it's like to a lot of people on the Kyrgyzstan, if you want like call it, but if the job didn't involve you being called by China, it would be a perfect job because you get paid to shitpost.
Wow. Have you guys have encountered this firsthand? You've seen comments?
We suspect so, but we can't confirm.
Sure.
We were it was one of those issues where it's like we think this guy's like from he's one of those Chinese pro farmers, but we didn't want to believe it because he really hated on us, and we're like, you're nobody until you have someone who follows every video and hates it.
Yeah.
Like, we were really hoping we have our official hater, but
it's like your rite of passage.
Yeah, that was before the boom, and I'm like, look, I hope this guy's real because you're nobody unless you have a guy like this.
Yeah. But so for the listeners that are wondering why we're getting into this, basically some people know probably I grew up in Taiwan. I was born in the States. My mother's from Taiwan, and growing up there was definitely an interesting atmosphere. I mean, it was a very different world that I was in over there. That I mean, anything, because the pending invasion from China was just still pending. Still pending invasion was
I believe it's a very real fear.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And I grew up in that, and it's just, but it was so normal that like when I came here and I told people about certain things, like, oh yeah, here we have, I mean, the closest thing was like a lockdown drill. I remember when that was a thing in school, a lockdown for, active shooter situations.
Oh.
But here in the States, you had your tornado drill. I'm in the Midwest. You had like a fire drill and all that. You had all these different drills, and then you had the lockdown drill. Well, in Taiwan, we had something called an air raid drill. You would all
hide under? Like, what do you hide under? What's going to drop a bomb?
So you hide into the basement. All your classes hide into the basement. Well, you had earthquake drills and air raid drills, actually. So earthquake, that's a different thing for.
Yeah, you don't want to go down there for an earthquake.
Yeah. So, you would. So all the Taiwanese schools would have kind of like their athletic area. So there's like it's a track. We'd all go out to the track. All the classes would congregate out there away from the school. So for anyone who knows anything about Taiwanese building and architecture, it's horrible for earthquakes unless you're in the 101. That's about it. The Taipei 101 is built for earthquakes. Everything else is just concrete and rebar, and it's just going to crumble. Yeah. If you guys ever seen like those apartment buildings that topple like dominoes, that's like all over the place. So we lived in a house with a crack in the wall. It wasn't dangerous, but it was a visible crack, and it was just part of what you lived in. So if there's an earthquake, you get out of the building because you don't want it to topple. Anyways, so we would have air raid drills where you'd go into the basement, and it's pretty much like propaganda, similar to during the Cold War, all the drills they do with nuclear bombs. You put your thumbs in your ears and your fingers over your eyes. And they would play a nice little sound, basically protecting your ears from the sounds, eyes from the flash or debris. And they would play a nice little soundtrack of planes flying over the area and dropping bombs.
Wait, how would you get a soundtrack if you're covering your ears?
Well, no one actually followed it. It's like it's a drill, so we're just like, oh, and then so we'd look, and then you'd hear, planes flying over and bombs going off, so just over the loudspeaker.
I got a question then. As a Taiwanese millennial, did that make Taiwanese millennials more fearful of China or more skeptical like this was actually a threat?
Yeah, because back when we did our drills, the kids, every time you do a earthquake or a fire drill, it just becomes a game.
Yeah,
right?
we started.
The prospect of having an actual fire and an actual earthquake became more and more of a joke.
I mean, the generation that had the most real, like, firsthand experience of fear of the communists would be my grandmother's generation.
Yeah.
So my family, similar to a handful of families in Taiwan, they were among the nationalists that left during the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So came here. She was the oldest of like 10 kids, and then my mom and her two sisters, and then me. So my mom grew up. I told you guys. I think she's kind of like a Taiwanese equivalent to like an Alex Jones light. So she's just because anything regarding China,
they're coming together.
anything regarding China, she would always like, well, you know why they do that, right? It's because of this. It's because of the commies.
Yeah.
Well, you know why they do that, right? It's because of the commies. Like, we were watching the 2008 Beijing Olympics.
Yeah.
If you guys remembered, so if you looked at the stands, they weren't very full. They didn't have a lot of people there. And my mom would be like, you know why they do that, right? I'm like, well, just people don't care or people aren't going there? No, the commies bought out 2/3 of the tickets. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, they bought the tickets to diminish the possibility of large crowds and possibly another Tiananmen incident. I'm like,
oh, okay.
What? I'm like, okay, Mom.
That's like 40.
Yeah. But I remember also growing up, there was an American, at least an English-speaking radio station we listened to, and it was like 2 p.m. I'm sitting in the car with my dad, and he's listening to this because that's all. My dad's the white guy, the white. So we're listening to this, and they're just like, intelligence, sources have told us that there's 500 missiles aimed at Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Just missiles. And that's what I just grew up understanding. And even we didn't have any sort of real censorship. Like, we would look up American news that would talk about predictions of when the attack would happen. Well, it was supposed to happen in the 2000s. Well, maybe it's supposed to happen after the Beijing Olympics so that the public spotlight wouldn't be on them.
Yeah.
Or, still hasn't happened yet. But and then after I came back in 2008 or 9 is when and then right after we came back, we started hearing a little bit about they're opening up the channels of traveling between them and some trade. So there was no direct flight or traveling basically across the Taiwan Strait.
Yeah.
Unless it's missiles.
Exactly.
unless because every few years, China rolls up all the warships, rolls up all the missile launch pads, and they'd huck a bunch of missiles into the strait.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the strait is only I think it's maybe 100 meters deep, so it's not really that deep. It's not really even ocean, really. It's just because of how the continents there are.
Large river.
So what's the sentiment right now in Taiwan?
Because of the more opening of the channels of communication, of trade and such. The fear, being 3 generations down from the actual legitimate fear of it,
yeah.
I think people are a lot more. They're just more. It's relaxed.
Yeah.
We haven't been attacked since 3 generations ago.
Yeah.
We're just kind of chilling here. We've got America selling us military assets. We've got the French selling us military assets. Nothing really happens.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about the SJW situation, if that's made it there. I know I tried asking some family members about if you guys ever watched Black Pigeon Speaks, when he talks about the white left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I typed out that word and sent it to family, and I was like, have you guys heard of this? In Chinese we say the baizuo, the white left, and they were like, never heard of it.
Yeah, then again, only a Chinese internet term from China.
I sent it to my mom and aunts and even some cousins, and there I was like, well, it's a term that I heard about. Chinese use it in politics, and then they're all, well, Not many of them are really political. So
that's the thing with Asians, particularly East Asians, is the fact most of our peers and elders don't give a shit about politics.
But then I hear Taiwanese people are very active in terms of the democratic process.
But they're only in their own, I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're very involved. I think it's just as an affront to communism. Like growing up, it was always communism is bad, just regardless. Like we're super socialistic, but communism is bad. I grew up. You know, we did a stream a little bit ago where we were exchanging stories. Brook was talking about the NHS. We had a guy on talking about the VA and the Veterans Affairs, and then I was talking about the Taiwanese universal healthcare system. Everyone would get, so we had like similar to your credit card chip, we had a chip card back in like early 2000s. You would scan it at any hospital, and your copay was like $1.
Does Taiwan have a private system, a dual system?
I don't think they do.
Okay. Yeah.
No, they don't.
Hong Kong does. Like Hong Kong is, you know, for Hong Kong social program.
Yeah. There might be some privatization in like the Chinese medicine, which is kind of, you know, but
it's like in the Chinese medicine is usually completely privatized because nobody would insure that.
It would depend. Like they would have to be like maybe some sort of like a hybrid doctor, you know, Eastern and Western medicine. Like it was like, common language.
You're a hybrid, or like, you know,
what's that? Yeah, like I'm a hybrid. Yeah. So yeah, no, I just remembered that universal healthcare there was not that good. Every time I brought it up, like when I started understanding a little bit about healthcare, I'd ask my mom. She goes, "Oh, it's a completely bankrupt system. Horrible care."
In Hong Kong, most people actually use the private system. They only use if they're really cheap ass, then they use the public system. Well, but the privite system is not even that expensive, so most of them just go pay the 200 Hong Kong dollars to see a private doctor.
That's like $40 here. Yeah. But either way, it's. The Hong Kong system is, from what I understand, is unless you don't have a job, nobody would ever go for the private system. I mean, the public system.
Yeah, the 8-hour lineup.
Yeah, like you gotta go there right in the morning, like at 7, and start lining up, or you won't see the doctor by the end of the day.
You line up to get into another lineup.
Like to get processed.
Numbers? You guys have the numbers?
Yeah.
You have to get a number for your visit. Yeah, same thing in Taiwan. So I describe like you go into a huge waiting room that could hold like 200 people.
Yeah.
You call up to set up the appointment, and they're like, "Oh, you're number 52." So
you're number 52. Like that's pretty good, right? No, it's actually like you're 52G, which like, you know,
it's rolled over.
And then you'd go in. So the whole process was you walked in. So your number comes up. You go in, and you're standing in the doorway with a guy ahead of you sitting down talking to the nurse. So she's entering in all the information. Behind her is the doctor having a doctor's visit with a patient. So there's no privacy, you know. So you're coming in, you're hearing two guys' medical history. And then you sit down, the guy comes in behind you, and then the guy in, that it's a little assembly line, and then there's a doctor. I mean, it even got to the point where like any sort of inspection the doctor had to make, like taking off your clothes. If they didn't have a curtain in that room, it would drop your drawers. You're just doing whatever you're doing right there. No real like privacy of any kind. I remember as a kid, I had to like I had to have a certain medical procedure, a suppository, and basically put in front of other strangers and the nurse and the doctor. As a kid, it was just
that's hilarious.
That's my like universal healthcare sucks story is like having a suppository administered as a child naked in front of strangers and the doctor and the nurse. You
don't know if they were watching, but in your mind's eye, they're all watching.
Everybody's watching.
Everybody, but it was just so commonplace that they didn't think twice of it. Like here in the States, there'd be BuzzFeed articles up, through the roof talking about how like there's child abuse happening in the healthcare system. I don't know, maybe Vice or someone would do that, but you just don't. Yeah, that doesn't happen here. So people want universal healthcare, and I just say, no, you don't. You don't.
So we like I just imagine. I've never been in a like completely a universal healthcare system in Asia, but I just imagine a giant DMV like that could just fit more people. You line up to get in the line, so you can get into another line, so you can get processed 3 times.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll see a doctor in the end.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why it hasn't gone as bad in Scandinavia and in Canada is because population density is so low.
It's so small.
Scandinavia and Canada.
I mean, it's a disaster in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably seen the articles, and they admit that they're actually euthanizing patients, the elderly and stuff like that out here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a complete disaster. I mean, yeah, we wouldn't even go into that. That's a long story, though.
Yeah. Well, I personally have a story about a Canadian social healthcare.
Recent story.
Well, not that recent.
Yeah.
Well, okay, recent. We'll go with the less recent one and then the more recent one. When I was mentioned to you guys pre-show that I used to work for a lot of ski resorts, I was really big into snowboarding. At one point, I broke my femur. I broke. So they took me up to the hospital. Took me 3 hours to get an X-ray.
Wow.
That's because you weren't dying. That's why they didn't.
No, the issue. Well, there was an issue. The issue was actually my pain tolerance is really high. So
you didn't think it wasn't broken.
If you break your femur, you're not gonna be like you're gonna be screaming. Like you're not gonna be like cracking jokes with the nurses.
Right.
And so there was somewhat of disbelief. But then they got me to the X-ray 3 hours later. They're like, "Oh, we were completely wrong. You've broken your femur. Let us try to schedule you a surgery." And the surgery turned out to be 24 hours later.
Wow.
And the whole time is like, look, that's not the worst part. The worst part is that was back when they still splinted your leg, and to stabilize the leg, one of the splint was going straight into my crotch. It's like squeezing my balls. I can't move because I've got a broken left femur. So I spent 24 hours with this like gigantic rod without a cushion, like just not even gently, like pushed up against my nuts.
Wow.
Yeah. Universal healthcare sucks.
Yeah, the wait time is unbearable. They put a metal rod in there, which eventually had to be removed 2 years later. Not in my nuts. In my So I went back, made an appointment for my surgery, and essentially I went there in the morning for my surgery. I could not eat for 24 hours before then. I sat for 8 hours because they kept pushing my surgery back. So and then at the end of the 8 hours, they told me, yeah, like there was an emergency. The doctor who was supposed to operate on you has to operate on someone else. And so you came here and stuff for a day plus 8 hours for nothing.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Did they give you any painkillers?
That's after 2 years, so I didn't really need.
Right.
Oh, you mean for when I'm
or even for the first time?
Yes, but it was
ibuprofen.
I don't like it wasn't that much because I was. I think I'm gonna have to say that was probably more my fault. I was young and stupid and had this idea that morphine is for pussies. And nowadays I have a better idea of things, and Yeah, no, morphine is most definitely not for pussies.
I mean, Jeff, do you have like a social health care horror story of some kind?
Well, luckily enough, I've never actually had sustained any serious injuries. But we have a mutual friend who's a snowboarder, Mako. Remember? And when I met him, he sustained a snowboarding injury, and he had a limp. He walked with a limp, and I've known him for about 5 years now, and 4 out of those 5 years he's walked with that limp. He only just got surgery last year to fix it.
Oh, I got an addendum to my story was a week after I first got the surgery on for my femur, I blew my stitches. So I had to
doing what?
I couldn't drive because like I can't. I was driving a stick at the time, so I couldn't work the clutch.
Right.
So I had to walk to the hospital because I was broke. I couldn't afford a cab, and an ambulance here costs money anyways. So much for socialized healthcare.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't afford to actually take transport there. I got to the emergency room and they said, "Yeah, so what's the issue?" I'm like, "Oh, I had surgery a week ago. I blew my stitches." And they're like, "Oh, sit down over there." And I sat there for 3 hours bleeding.
Oh, jeez.
Like onto the floor. There was a little puddle there. I wasn't dying, so they didn't care that much. When the janitor would come by every every half an hour and he would mark it out. And then eventually, like after the second time, he got tired of it, so he just left the bucket and the mop there. And eventually, they got me in there, and by that time, the blown stitches have already clotted over. That's why I have it. Like one of my scars is gigantic.
Right.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Like if you ever go into stand-up comedy, that'd make a really interesting routine because it's just so ridiculous.
Well, it's the best stories are like, this was actually a true story, not just based on a true story. It
was a true story.
Exactly.
Oh, that's crazy. I mean, just touching on I guess the one China policy. I know you guys were talking about going off to Hong Kong. I know Jeff, you got your citizenship.
That's his end game.
Yeah, just me. I don't think he's interested.
Okay, I mean,
the issue is not, I would get my I would not get my citizenship. I might get because I don't want to be a citizen of China by proxy.
Right.
But I might get a permanent residency there, get a house there if I have the money at that time. Because Hong Kong is okay 3 months out of the year, like November, December, January, and then like I just can't be there. It's too hot.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask: is why Hong Kong, and are you concerned about the bridge that China has built?
Yes. So lots of concerns. There's a lot of concerns happening, but at the same time. Well, first of all, why Hong Kong? So I mentioned that Hong Kong has that dual system, private healthcare and public healthcare. So Hong Kong is a big believer in. They're one of the most, you could still. Did you guys freeze? You guys are still there.
Yeah, no, we got you.
One of the lowest tax brackets, lowest income taxes in the world. It's very easy to start a business there. Plenty of people own businesses actually, and we before we started being Amos, we're talking about night markets. Like night market and just market culture in general in Hong Kong is just flourishing right now.
There's also the fact that a lot of you can run many businesses and you can run many enterprises without actually setting up an actual company in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
there's laws against that, but it's easy to skirt around. It's sometimes it feels like they're there just as a formality.
Right.
Yeah. And also at the same time, I think there's a personal aspect to it. It's because, my mom is from Hong Kong. My wife is from Hong Kong. Hong Kong does feel like a second home to me. I don't think it's for everybody, but for me, at least, it's my home. It feels more like home in Hong Kong right now than it does in Canada, actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And the bridge, what's going on with this?
So regarding the concerns, So a few years ago, there was the yellow umbrella protest in Hong Kong, and that was not to
be confused with the yellow
vest. Yellow vest.
Yep.
Which is doing much better than the yellow umbrella protest.
Look, the umbrellas are unwieldy. You have to hold them with one hand. You cannot riot. Or
holding an umbrella.
What used as a protection against gas canisters.
We're not watching like the what do you call it? The Kingsman. Like we don't have magical umbrellas. It does not stop tear gas or
bullets. Yeah.
Although the free market should provide someday, right?
And yeah. I would buy one. I would buy the shit out of those umbrellas. Yeah.
But yeah, that protest was over the Hong Kong election.
Yes.
A couple of issues at the time, but they were not happy with mainland China's interference with the Hong Kong election process. And because China has this deal with Hong Kong that they're not going to change Hong Kong for 50 years.
Yeah.
One nation, two systems for 50 years. But the fact is that Communist China is already starting to implement their will on the Hong Kong government. And so, yeah, there is a lot of concern. And I think the hope of Hong Kong independence, if you will, kind of died with the umbrella protests. Because after that got shut down, I don't think there's any more will to protest anymore in Hong Kong.
Really?
Now it's just kind of acceptance. It's like, it is what it is. And that's really the nature of power anyway. I mean, a lot of libertarians are very idealistic and say, okay, if we could just, decentralize enough and everybody can live peacefully. But in reality, there are powerful people, there are powerful nations that are going to try to impose their will on weaker nations. And that's what Hong Kong is a case of.
It's like that Athens thing.
Yeah. The weak do what they will, and the weak must suffer what they must. The strong do what they will.
Yeah. So originally the idea was that Hong Kong was the economic center.
Yeah.
And China was going to kind of back off from that. But now, Shenzhen, Beijing, all of these places now have huge economic centers. So what made Hong Kong special is they don't see it as that kind of gem annemore.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's a bit of optimism there as well, because Shenzhen is becoming very capitalistic. And even Beijing is an economic zone that has shopping malls, it has tons of markets. It's very capitalistic. So in that sense, I mean, China, communist China, but really,
they're not even quite crony capitalism, China, but the corrupt capitalism China, I guess.
I think there's an argument to be made that they're kind of fascist. They're kind of fascistic because their economy is run in service to the state, but it is private enterprise economy.
But it's joint venture though. You got to partner with the government to run your enterprise or something like that.
And they also the Chinese Communist Party also preaches kind of the glorification of the Chinese people. Yeah. It's the Chinese dream, and we have to make China great again.
Right.
So it is very.
We already got, and they've already got a wall, so I guess
they're ahead of Trump. That's great.
So here's the thing. I gotta ask you is. You're mentioning how you guys are also we're all mentioning about how Hong Kong has become less important strategically because there's other economical centers that come around. But if to let those areas rival Hong Kong, China must loosen up the even social policy in terms of. In terms of dealing with foreign entities and citizens, because if they crack down too hard in the other two zones, then Hong Kong's importance reemerges. So in a way, I guess that's gonna lead to more freedoms in China, maybe.
But then at the same time, there's the social credit system coming in. So it's
like, for example, like the thing I'm talking about is, let's say they implement the social credit system back in China. They're gonna push that. They're obviously not gonna let Beijing and Shenzhen
and Fujian.
They're not gonna let those be excluded from the social credit system. Whereas I don't think they're gonna implement it in Hong Kong. That would make Hong Kong special again. People will foreigners doing business with China will once again go to Hong Kong because they don't have to deal with that shit.
Right. I mean, again, if your prospect is you want to go to Hong Kong and Hong Kong's like a home, if mainland China's intervention continues, do you think you'd want to leave? Or
I would, yeah.
Yeah, there's a line in the sand. What's the line in the sand?
Well, the social credit system is definitely one of the things.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the internet actually. If they wanted to move the Great Firewall of China into Hong Kong, then I would leave for sure.
Okay.
Although that's a very easy thing to bypass, but it's inconvenient. But it's a signifier that freedom is lost in this place now. Yeah.
His end game is in Hong Kong, but my end game is
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Switzerland. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'll meet you there. We'll have some samosas and stuff.
Yeah, and we'll I don't know. We'll learn
one of the 5 official languages.
German, French. Yeah. Ski with some blondes. It'll be great.
Yeah.
One other factor that I have in mind that I consider is, where do I want to raise my children?
Good question.
And right now in Canada, like, it's getting to the point where I don't know if the state can already take your children away if they want to be a girl one day. If your boy wants to be a girl one day and you say no. So
look, the point is, I don't. Being a libertarian, if they really want to transition, you can't really stop them. But if you're not legally liable if you kill a man, I don't think you should be like deciding your own gender yet.
Yeah.
Right. At least until you're 18, kind of thing. Is what you're saying. Yeah.
Because you like, if they take if you take away if you get your penis chopped off, they can't give it back. Like, that's the whole point.
I mean,
apparently they can.
Well, there's the whole thing.
Obviously not going to function as well.
Yeah. There's the whole thing with what is it? Once you reach a certain age, like, typical gender dysphoric behavior tends to go away once you reach puberty.
Yeah.
So you had like a couple of kids that were like, they started halfway transitioned, and then they like started going through puberty, and then they changed their mind.
Yeah.
But now they're like completely screwed for life. They can't.
Well, and I also want to argue about the fact that if they transition before they hit puberty and then puberty hits, what's that gonna do? Like, you've already thrown in a bunch of hormones, and then here's another dose of other hormones. Like, what's that gonna look like?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We don't have enough research on this thing.
I don't think we should research it. It's.
I mean, they're doing it anyway, right? And there's some terrible policies that have come down, and we'll see. We will see the result of this social experiment, and I don't think the results are going to be good.
Yeah, I think the only way to win is not play the game.
Yeah, very black pill. As you're waiting for the collapse of the Western civilization.
We're hoping that, like, that's.
Are you stockpiling gold?
What's that?
Are you stockpiling gold?
Well, I am, but that's another story. I would like to. No, we advocate a lot of like libertarianism and like masculinity and people forming their own tribes, because if the West collapses, we need to be in a much better position than our political opponents to retake power.
Agreed. Do you have that as a plan? Do you have like a contingency plan if it all goes to shit?
Not right now, not that much. I have a lot of plans when I get the money, but right now,
don't we all?
I'm still in the stage of disregard bitches acquire money phase.
But back to the. I mean, Jeff? Did you have any specific questions? So you're asking about like millennials in Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've kind of turned this whole episode into the nightmares of semi-socialistic countries. Exactly. That's kind of the broad theme here.
We've done worse. Don't worry.
I think it's a good topic, actually.
I think we could if you want to go back to the original topic.
I don't think we. Well, maybe
eventually is we could
just let it go, guys. Whatever, wherever we go is fine. Don't worry about it.
That's the thing with this show is we kind of just go wherever we want to go, depending upon how the conversation goes. I mean, we could start with talking about one topic and then end up with something completely different.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's my train of thought right now. Is we're talking about how when does Jeff know that Hong Kong is beyond saving, that you can't make Hong Kong great again?
When it starts to look like Canada.
I mean, you could start a whole movement called "Make Hong Kong Special Again," because that was the whole thing, is making it special.
Yeah, it will sound a lot better too. It's marketable. Almost, you go onto something here.
Well, basically, the way I look at it is, I have the option of always moving back and forth. So when Canada looks better than Hong Kong, then I just move back to Canada. It's that simple, right?
You wouldn't go anywhere else in Asia? You wouldn't consider like a Singapore or something like that?
Or like Japan?
Singapore is interesting. But for me to get Singaporean citizenship, I have to invest $2 million US dollars.
Okay.
So that's a little bit tricky.
There's also the fact that you can't they've outlawed some fatty foods.
Have they?
In Singapore, because it's very bad for they said it's bad for your health.
Yeah. It's kind of like New York then trying to ban trans fats.
Yeah, but I was like, dude, like fats are the staple of my diet. Like it's you can't tell me that I can't have the foods that's integral to my religion.
But then again, the Singaporean food itself is very fatty, so I'm sure they're not going to ban that. There's lots of options for fatty foods in Singapore, even if they ban the North American options, I guess.
Yeah, well, but either way, it's what about Japan? Like I'm always thinking like I'm gonna jump in between Switzerland and Japan, like
Yeah. So the thing about Japan is I'm not sure if I'll ever feel at home in Japan.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Taiwan then.
Taiwan is interesting too. I have relatives in Taiwan, and I've been to Taiwan, and I actually quite like Taiwan.
I actually think Taiwan is on the long run in a bit better position than Hong Kong. Because my projection of what China is gonna do is they're gonna just come into Hong Kong one of these days. We don't know when, but they're just gonna say, okay, well, we've owned your ass for like 50 years. Maybe they'll even keep the promise. 50 years later, they're like, we've owned your ass for 50 years. It's time to take the kids' gloves off. And we're going to molest you to the full extent of our powers.
To the back of your teeth.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm about to get us banned in China, but I'm going to talk about the best case scenario. Xi Jinping is a 65-year-old man right now.
Yes.
I don't know if he's going to last.
No, look. If you want to get around the censorship, just call Winnie the Pooh as a.
You're not even allowed to talk about Winnie the Pooh, the bear.
Right, a certain yellow bear, a yellow bear who loves honey and hangs out with tiger and wears a red shirt.
Yeah.
That bear that's not allowed in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah. So, assuming the next president of China isn't cyborg Xi Jinping.
What about
yeah? What about 58,000 to 1,000?
There is hope that the next guy could be a more socially liberal and fiscally conservative type of guy.
Okay. I've only got one question. Who's scarier, cyborg Xi Jinping or Skynet?
Oh,
Toss up.
And cyborg Xi Jinping hacks Skynet.
Who knows? Like, who has?
They merge and become one.
Look, the Skynet is a computer. It's very good at doing calculations. But Xi Jinping is an Asian man who's also very good at doing calculations. So I don't know. Hacking.
I mean, if you ever watch Transcendent, they always said like creating an AI was pretty good, but the best AI was copying an existing mind. So. Cyborg would be definitely more dangerous because he would have his mind being unleashed onto the internet.
Yeah.
So,
what if? But what if by some weird algorithm, internet algorithm, coincidence, Xi Jinping's mind got merged with Winnie the Pooh data and then became a cyborg?
You guys have a weird imagination. Has anybody ever told you that?
The US tries to invade China, and then just you hear this like over the intercom. Oh bother! But in a Chinese accent.
Oh, that is. I mean, what would you say?
What we're talking about.
So, what would you say? Because okay, so I'm a trader, right? And we look at China quite regularly for our forecasting and stuff like that.
Right.
And we think there's a real possibility of a breakup of China, right? Ooh. We think the North and the South could pretty much split because of debt and all the resources are going to the city. Yeah. And I mean, the numbers that they're putting out now, they're just making shit up, right? It's not even real.
They've always made shit up. Like
true. There's the Caxton and the official, which was HSBC.
Fair, I don't even think Xi Jinping knows the real numbers because his own guys are lying to him.
Yeah.
They're like, look, we don't want to get in trouble, so we're just gonna keep telling you we're doing better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I mean, is this something you've heard? Because I mean, I'm far removed, but you know, you think it might be possible?
Anything's possible.
We could hope, right? We could hope. I know Russia would be very thrilled.
Yeah, those Western provinces, Tibet and Xinjiang are. I mean, China has to keep a constant watch on them. There's troops stationed everywhere,
And if one breaks free, you think it might have like a domino effect?
Oh no!
If the economy goes to shit, then yes.
Okay, possibly, yeah.
Because we're always talking about how there's two ways to kind of keep population under your thumb. Like with bread and circus, if the people are fed and entertained, they can live without pride. But if they if there's and without food, people can live if they have pride. But if they have neither, then they just don't give a shit anymore.
Revolution, yeah.
And well, that's kind of what's happening in France. But
I mean, we think Europe is going to collapse as well. I think, at least the EU is going to collapse.
So I believe the current power that the People's Party of China. People's Party, whichever you prefer. The Winnie the Pooh's party. They're only keeping the only way they're keeping a strict, firm control over China proper is the fact that the people are living better than their parents.
Mm-hmm.
They can see that, like even the fucking peasants, even the farmers, like. They could clearly see that this generation has a better livelihood than last generation. And all of a sudden, Xi Jinping's iron fist doesn't up your ass doesn't sound so bad.
Doesn't feel so bad.
Yeah. Like, there's the economical incentive provides enough KY jelly to ease the process.
Because on that matter, a lot of the Communist Party members are actually the billionaire and millionaire class of China. Jack Ma is the Communist Party.
Huawei
guy. All the Huawei people are in the Communist Party.
And then there's the Alibaba guy.
Yeah, Jack Ma. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Once the bread, what does he call it?
Bread and circus.
Yeah, like once that dries up.
That dries up.
Those millionaires and billionaires are going to instantly fund revolutionaries.
Well, we're gonna get, and all of them will claim a corner of China.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the three of them, like Jack Ma, Huawei guy.
There's gonna be Huawei province
and
Alibaba.
What kind of state will go in Hong Kong?
Oh,
Li
Beigasheng.
Yeah,
Beigasheng.
Yeah, they're all gonna capture a corner of China, and then it's going to be
saying it's the new Three Kingdoms?
Three Kingdoms. Yeah.
Almost call it.
Oh, that's epic. That's epic.
The second Three Kingdoms War.
Yeah. This is going to be great. This is going to be great. Fund it. I'm okay. Remember how I have a project going? I'm trying to get into writing again.
Yes.
That's gonna be a thing. I'm gonna write a. That's what I'm gonna write. The new
the rise of the second three kingdoms.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, man.
But yeah, no, I actually see a good chance of China federalizing. Like, you're gonna get a kind of like a federation of Russia. It's situation going on with China if they manage to retain power long enough. I feel like
China has already arrested numerous like local governors and politicians for being kind of dissidents as well. So there is a kind of this culture of trying to get away with as much as you can within the Communist Party.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it could bankrupt. We basically suspect it's going to bankrupt the state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the state is probably already bankrupt.
With corruption. Yeah.
I was mentioning how Hong Kong might get the worst of it, but I believe Taiwan they may get even if China becomes the new world power, they might get a deal of China where they're like, look, we're not going to invade you, we're going to win, but then we're going to destroy precious infrastructure. Just bend the knee, you have some semblance of autonomy, will become part of Chinese Federation.
Right.
That might be a deal that's going to be offered to the Southeast Asian islands, Taiwan, and kind of that area, the South China Sea area. I could see that happening.
That's intense. That's intense.
And then they'll have to, then Taiwan and like the Philippines, Malaysia, they'll have to decide who to join, like the Alibaba side, the Huawei side, or the Lei faction.
Yeah.
That's funny, man.
It's interesting because Alibaba could become the future payment processor of the world. Huawei could be the future tech, communications infrastructure kingpin of the world.
Yeah, like 5G, right? Yeah.
Beat out Google? You think?
Well, if you, that's the thing. This all hinges on, can China fake the numbers long enough to gain global supremacy?
Yeah.
Can they do it or not? If they can, then obviously yes. Like, if you're the major economical center of the world, you can say, okay, well, this is our official phone carrier. Using this model of phone will give you more ease of access to our infrastructure than, let's say, Apple or Samsung. Many people will be forced to buy Huawei.
Yeah. If Huawei has their own OS and doesn't use Android anymore, then that's instantly
if
adoption.
Alibaba like all of a sudden, because China's market is eclipsed the US's, Alibaba will then eclipse Amazon. And they could also push a thing where, okay, well, more and more companies that want to operate in China will only accept Alipay and not PayPal. That way they could supplant PayPal. When you have the political clout, you can pull a lot of like shit.
They could, they could even penetrate the West because MasterCard right now is implementing political censorship.
Yeah.
MasterCard is telling Patreon, hey, stop giving this guy a platform. And Alipay could easily swoop in and say, hey, who'll give you a platform? Because we don't care. Yeah.
Or,
I mean, you wonder if someone like Alibaba, who's going to take over Amazon, is going to make a move with the Jeff Bezos divorce situation.
Look, who knows? He sent the woman there.
Yeah.
He sent the
Operation Sanchez.
Yeah, like he sent him a mistress, and then when he gets divorced, the mistress will push for marriage, and then divorce him. So now he's only a quarter
shareholder,
like a quarter amount, and then Jack Ma comes in and just say, "No, I heard you're having money trouble. I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. Become part of the Ma Kingdom. I will be your savior." become my retainer. See what sort of riches and servants I will offer you. And then Jeff Bezos was like, I have to. This is my only way to survival. Oh, I'm writing these things already. It's going to look great.
We're having a really good brainstorming session for some interesting future fiction. What is it? The New Three Kingdoms.
Rise of the New Three Kingdoms.
The Rise of the New Three Kingdoms. The
downfall of Bezos.
Yeah. Like you could have like a whole book series about this. And then you have like
writing about each individual stories that led up to the circumstance of the rise of the New Three Kingdoms.
You have like a new the Alibaba Amazon takeover. So like because the Jeff Bezos divorce was a power play. Yeah. It was all planned.
Yeah, and then like within each faction, you kind of write about how like everyone's trying to secede. Take the new role as the king of the territory. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be bigger than Hunger Games. It's gonna be huge.
It's Tom Clancy meets Hunger Games.
Except there's gonna be an actual there's actually gonna be strong female protagonists.
But was there? I guess.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here?
I mean, we reported the downfall of China. Sex, intrigues, fisting. What's left?
Man.
Any more questions about Taiwan?
Right. Well, initially, I did want to ask you, how the Taiwanese millennials actually feel about China? Because I get the sense that they're opening up to the idea of
they're forgetting. They're forgetting.
That's the big thing.
Yeah,
by generational
the horrors of communism. Even everybody.
Being 3 generations down from. It's funny being 3 generations down from real communism. They're wondering if we should try it again. No, it just seems because that fear has kind of gone away. I mean, it's similar to so in Taiwan it's similar to how they raise children too. So in Taiwan you have a huge gap in how kids' upbringings are basically changing and creating different kinds of kids. I don't know if you ever heard of the term, maybe in Hong Kong, if they ever had this, the term "little emperor."
Yeah,
the little emperor kids. So that was a big thing when I was growing up because I was kind of the first among that. It was basically millennials growing up was the little emperors, at least the later millennials, because it was like, well, we all grew up in poverty and hardship. We want to give our kids the best life possible. So we're going to give them no rules and all the money.
Yeah.
And they're just going to be so you just have a bunch of spoiled brats that have no appreciation of real life. I mean, my parents, we grew up when I was in Taiwan, we actually lived in a house on a mountain. And one of the problems we had was you would have this gang of usually probably kids in their like late teens going on, basic crotch rockets going up and down the mountain roads in the middle of the night. Full blast. You're hearing them, and then, of course, they're waking up everyone in the neighborhoods that they're going through. Just a bunch of these spoiled kids. It was always motorcycles with them. And because they have no real appreciation of just decency, manners, just a lot of cultural customs, because there was just that huge gap. And I think similarly, you have now people who grew up in hard, just real communism. And as you move down the generations, they're just told to fear communism, but no real, experience to back that. So then they go, they see, well, the government's okay with communists, we're opening up channels of communication. We're trading with them a little more.
Yeah.
And there's really no attack. We hear about it all the time, but nothing really happens.
Yeah.
Do you think it's within it's the nature of kids to when they're younger to distrust what their parents tell them? like just naturally, like
especially if there's no real backing to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you tell a kid a stove is hot and they touch a stove, oh, I believe him now. But if you tell them communism is bad and they've never seen communism, but they hear about it all the time, but nothing's happening, well, it's probably bullshit to them.
It's hard to sell.
Yeah,
I had a somewhat of a different experience. You can go first.
Communism is also really easy to sell to these kids.
Free shit.
yeah.
And it's the same phenomenon in the West, really. Like all of these middle class bourgeois white kids, who grew up in gated communities, they're all loving, Marx now, right?
I mean, America is kind of a huge gated community, depending on how you look at it, too.
Yeah,
it's true.
It kind of happened differently with me because like my dad fucking hated commies, and I don't know. It's just weird because I believed him. It's like. I guess it's because he reacted very differently to most things than communism. He's always very open. He was always very open-minded, and he would when I said, "Hey, why do you think it works that way?" He would explain to me, and with communism, there's this like you can. He tries not to show it, but you can feel the searing hatred emanating from his very being about when it comes to communism. I'm like, when a man who's normally cheerful and laid back gets that triggered over something, there's probably a good reason for it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember growing up, because I had, I was in Taiwan, but I had a lot of still Western influence because our family hung out with a lot of Americans or Westerners that were in Taiwan. So we kind of had that influence. And after we came back to the States, I didn't know how taboo some of these things were until I started to understand them. I mean, I said to my mom one time, I said in Chinese, because I didn't know his name. I just said, "Oh yeah, Chairman Mao." And my mom's like, "You don't say that ever." And I'm like, she's like, "You don't even say his name. You basically call him." What's that?
Voldemort. He's Voldemort.
He is, and very much so. You had to call him. So in Chinese, it's not Mao Zedong. You don't say Mao Zedong. You would say, I think there was one that was called like Mao Cha Cha, which literally means Mao so and so.
Oh.
You wouldn't even say. You would just say his surname and so. You wouldn't even say his actual name. Like I asked my mom told me one time about the Little Red Book, and I said, if I ever saw one, like, would you even read it, Mom? She goes, no, I wouldn't even touch it. But then I would.
We should touch it to burn it.
Exactly. Her skin will start to burn.
Touching it to burn it, we should do so.
Right. But I was actually in a social studies class in high school, and my teacher had one, and he like gave it to me, and I was fine with it, but I told him, I said, if my mom knew I was reading this, she'd be so upset. And then so I grabbed it, and I looked through it. It's a bunch of simplified Chinese, so I couldn't read it that well. Yeah, and you probably know about that, the difference between simplified and traditional.
Yeah. I actually find it pretty easy to read both. Because generally...
He's a commie. Kill him.
I never understood that until someone told me, like, when I explained Chinese, because I had an understanding. My mom's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you control the language, like how it's written and stuff, you're controlling the people. And I thought, well, that's weird. Like, how does that make any sense? I told someone else, and they read 1984. They're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm like,
I actually think in that case, it's in this case, it's less about controlling the language. It's because when they were trying to get communist China up and running, at the time, most people were illiterate. And you can't get them you can't get them to learn simplified. Traditional that easily because it's tougher characters, more strokes. Yeah. If you're hoping to get some sort of people who could read class, like not even scholar, like functional human being class of people up and running in a short time. You simplified language and just forced them to learn it. Or they learn it or they get 10 lashes.
Yeah. Also, you got to remember that communism is an internationalist ideology. It's the internationalist socialist worker party, right? Workers of the world unite. So in the long term, Mao also had to think that, our language has to be global. So to get foreigners to learn.
Then that's stupid, because simplified Chinese is just as hard as
I mean, one of the things I was always taught was, so like the word for medicine, right? The how it's constructed. So the word for medicine, if you ever actually I can pull it up here quick.
Show us, Senpai.
Medicine in Chinese. Here we go. So I'll just do a quick little thing. So for the podcast listeners, definitely want to check this out on the live stream. Here we go. So here's the traditional writing for the word Chinese. Sorry, for medicine.
It's something white, something, and then the bottom thing is wood.
Wood, but actually, what's more interesting? So you have the construction of like wood, but so these two strokes up here, that is the radical, which is like a component to the word. These mean grass or herb.
Yep.
This whole bottom part means is the Chinese word for happiness.
It's for
happiness.
Good happiness.
Happy, joy, whatever. So herb and happy makes you happy. So it's weed.
Oh, it's marijuana.
It is.
Like drugs.
It's marijuana. Excellent.
Because Chinese medicine was herbal, so it's an herb that made you happy. So it was medicine. But
take more drugs, kids.
Look at that simplified there. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's all yao, fourth tone. So you look at it and has no meaning. I mean, these are actual radicals in Chinese.
Yeah, but they don't mean anything together.
Exactly. So it made no sense. When I learned that, I kind of understood, like, you're literally taking the meaning out of the words, because Chinese was pictograms based upon words. When you start taking away the meaning, it just looks
in the process destroying thousands of years of tradition, as communists do.
Yeah.
True to form.
It always comes back to destroying thousands of years of tradition.
It's the default position.
And Chinese really is one of those few cultures that are still around. That's, it's all you always hear 5,000 years of history. Yeah, because.
All right, so this is a major plot point I'm going to put into the Rise of the New Three Kingdoms is the Alibaba and the Huawei state, they use simplified, but then the Lin family state, they use traditional.
He's from Hong Kong.
He's from Hong Kong.
I mean, there's even like political, like, I don't know, it wouldn't be like politically correct, but there is a sense of like political speech when it comes to describing. So in Chinese, when you're talking about like, when I say simplified, I would refer to it. I say jianti, literally means simplified, basically the simplified form. But if I'm describing what was traditional was formerly referred to as fanti, which could mean the troublesome or cumbersome form. But fanti. So when I said that to my mom once, she goes, no, it's called zhengti. Literally means the proper form.
Unless you're on the
proper or upright, basically straight upright, the straight and narrow, whatever you want to call it, the proper form. We're not calling it the troublesome or the complicated form. We're going to call it the proper form.
Unless
she got really adamant about that.
If you're on the internet, it's just called Big Five.
But yeah, it was just it's interesting when you start to really look into it. And I tell people this, and they're like, "Really? All that's going on?" It's
we don't know about. So interesting.
It's like Asian dog whistle.
It's like one of those alternate reality games I play on my Chinese cartoons.
Exactly. Any other things you guys wanted to touch on quick, or?
Yeah, do you want to start wrapping up? I guess we.
So yeah. I made kind of my own prediction. Not the Three Kingdoms one. That's a joke, but I believe if China manages to keep up the lie long enough to take control of the emerge as the empire of the world, next empire of the world, I believe that they'll end up having to federalize around, create a federation around the Asian continent.
So you think in that case that the central government will cede more powers to local governments?
No, they're gonna tell the neighbors, bend the knee to me, join the Chinese Federation, but for the most part we won't
interfere.
We'll only use 2 fingers. It's not gonna.
Predictions, Jeff? Predictions?
That's my prediction. Well, I kind of want to go around. Everyone can do their own predictions. Actual predictions, not the dramatized version like the new Three Kingdoms version.
Funny that we were talking about Black Pigeon Speaks earlier, and he's really bullish on World War III. And I'm a big Black Pigeon Speaks fan, and actually,
So you're gonna go with World War III? Yeah. Tell us the future.
You know, secretly, I don't know. This sounds bad, but secretly, I prefer that than the Chinese Federation. I'd rather like just all-out war, let it all burn, and let it all fry. And you know, in 200 years, we can go back and visit, you know, the new Chernobyl.
To be fair, most of us here are probably over the age of conscription. So at least even if we get conscription, we're going to be like the 3rd or 4th batch.
Yeah.
So it's not such a bad deal for us.
And Switzerland will be safe. Switzerland's a neutral country.
I'll meet you there, Bill.
I mean, yeah. Actually, you go ahead first, Brooke. Your prediction.
Oh, I mean, my stuff is all over my YouTube channel. So I'm in the UK.
You have to sell it.
Well, all the links will be below this video, so you know. But yeah, we definitely, Brexit is a major thing. I was definitely pro-Brexit. We foresee a lot of problems coming out of Europe. What they have basically is the Target 2 system, which is a way to kind of like regulate the money supply in the entire continent. So when money moves from one country to another, it's automatically sent back in the form of bonds that never have to be repaid, and there's no interest. So Italy and Germany are just, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and the rest are just milking this for all the money they can because it's free money, right? So all this money.
It's like, but why would you stop?
Yeah, I mean, they're borrowing more money than they could ever pay back, and they know it. It's
like one day Europe's going to burn to the ground, and when it burns to the ground, no one's going to ask for the money back.
Exactly. That's it. So we foresee that.
I have a sack with $sign on it, and periodically I'll come to your place and fill up the sack, and then I'll leave.
Exactly. So I would say the one bright spot in this scenario, and I think this is going to happen either this year or into next year. Northern Ireland. If the UK gets Northern Ireland right, it's going to be the gem of the Emerald Isles, for the simple reason that half of Ireland, Republic of Ireland's debt is used to pay of their GDP is used to pay debt. So literally half of their income for the state is going to finance.
They never quite recovered from 2000 from
the banking crisis. And because Britain is like 20% of their economy comes from the UK, and we no longer have to buy from them, they're going to be in a financial problem. So what we foresee happening is they're going to need a bailout. Germany's going to impose some kind of austerity, forcing them to raise taxes, and all those companies in Republic are going to move to Northern Ireland, and Northern Ireland is just going to boom because everybody's going to want to go there. So that's my prediction: the collapse of the euro, falling apart, and Northern Ireland.
Are you allowed to run for PM?
Me? No, no.
Are you able to talk someone into doing it? So you could be. You should tell him what you to do, because that sounds like a great idea. At least better than we're gonna do a vote of no confidence, get May out of here. And what am I gonna do when I get into power? I don't know. I'll figure that out. I'll burn that bridge when I get there.
Typical Jeremy Corbyn move.
What is your end game, dude? Like I get it. You want May out so you can do something, but what is that something? You have not elaborated what that something is.
That's a discussion for another time. We'll continue this another time, though, for sure.
I would say the U.S. I'm not too concerned about any sort of actual systemic collapse in terms of actual government systems, like the federal government, the state governments, local governments. I don't see much of that falling apart. I mean, there's definitely a lack of confidence in it. Like, people are definitely questioning it, especially with the shutdown, record-setting shutdown. More and more people are starting to realize how little the state really matters in that sense. Not that I'm pushing for any like crazy anarchist, Rothbard button anytime soon, but
well, the weird thing is when they shut down the state, nothing really changes. Like, who goes to fucking talk in middle of January?
Yeah, the procedure for a shutdown is just 80% operation. It's not a full shutdown. It's a partial shutdown. Like, so one of the things, like, I have family members that do my taxes for me because they're accountants. So the IRS is still running.
I'm assuming the Asian side.
No. So Brooke knows this. It's my white side of the family that are accountants.
Wow,
racist.
Exactly.
No wonder that the Asian side accepted them.
Exactly.
I'm here to ask to marry your daughter. I could do math.
It was funny. The first impression was from my grandmother to my father was her running into her bedroom yelling, "Oh my God, a foreigner!" Anyways, but I don't see much in terms of the actual system itself. I see more of like a cultural, like in terms of the cultural conversation. What's that?
She's like, "Oh, but he accounted."
And then it's like, when you marry him, moral.
But the collapse, I think, is more so on the cultural and the social side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're already seeing major backlash from like just the push of the progressives and the SJWs and the coming huge backlash.
I knew you were gonna say.
What'd you say?
I was like, I knew he was going to say that.
The huge backlash that is going to be pushed back against that there could be either you're going to start seeing, I think, a lot. I mean, we've talked about anything from like some people call like the gender war, the culture war. It's on all fronts, I think, when it comes to the culture side of things. Like,
how about the Civil War?
Civil War, I think, is like just before systemic collapse.
Mm-hmm.
But like in terms of degrees of like what I'm more confident in a social, cultural, actual like clash of people. Like, you're gonna see a lot more like full on like Antifa and even like more lighter conservatives actually engaging in some sort of fight or something. You might see a rise in violence. I think I've talked to Brooke, like, I think there's a critical point where you're going to have a rise in a lot of MGTOWs and incels, and actual violence might actually happen.
Hey, so almost, I got this epiphany because I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. We somehow this conversation somehow strayed into the American Civil War. You were there
yesterday.
Yeah. And he mentioned how the North won against the South was despite the commanders fielded just constant pressure until the resources they broke them through depletion of resources.
Right.
So I feel like maybe like it really feels like that's what is happening on the cultural front, because I feel look, the left can't meme. they consist of purely NPCs. From a character statistic point of view, we have the better PCs.
Like, right.
We have the better builds. Like in we would totally beat them, but so they feel that this like long eternal like 11-year war on us, where we're just being attacked on all sides. And that's and they're aiming to break us through sheer resources.
Right. The thing. Well, they have the sort of the social resource. Like the mainstream culture tends to favor the left a lot more right now, but the right, I guess more so, has like I think more physical resources, as well as like actually like they're the people that save money, invest in have money to invest, and there might even be they have guns.
Billionaire backers.
So you have I mean it's a clash of kind of like the mob funded by the one, the handful of billionaire crazy people, versus you have the majority of America that is taking care of themselves. The reason you're not seeing a huge backlash so soon with this overwhelming leftist progressive push is because we have a higher tolerance for bullshit. I think we're not we have to be pushed a lot further before we're like, okay, like before decency has to be, because we have decency, we have, essentially, I think the correct way of political correctness. We try to remain decent with people. We try to have, good political discourse.
There's also ways to placate the right that don't exist on the left. For example, the wall. If the wall gets constructed, a lot of conservatives will get placated, and then they won't.
Yeah, the placating too is like we just have a higher tolerance before we have to.
I believe it's more of a sense of being reasonable.
Yeah, because we're so much more reasonable, and so we have such a higher tolerance to unreasonable people that we're really not doing anything now. But because the left is just constantly getting stronger and stronger in that way.
The reason why we've held so long is because we've weaponized autism.
Right. But so what I'm getting at is basically because we can tolerate a lot more, it's going to be like that. But that's more likely because that you're seeing on a daily basis. I mean, just everyday people are just absolutely tired of constantly being called straight white male and so on and so forth, and the Gillette commercial and all this stuff. Now they're just kind of, they're complaining about it on social media, and people, I don't get why libertarians are kind of like, oh, horseshoe theory, you guys are just like SJWs. It's like
on the fucking horseshoe too. And about the mainstream
this ivory tower, like, oh, we're too good to get mixed up in the culture war.
But no, we're on there. Everyone's
libertarian NPCs, I call them too. Yeah, it's so the right and even just the more conservative people are. When the majority of America don't really care so much right now. They're still, their tolerance for, like you were saying, your pain tolerance with that story. It's like we have a higher.
It's like your theme is not broken.
It's like, yeah, I mean, we're literally like ceding a lot of ground, but it's going to get to the point where it's like, I mean, while they're like throwing just constant sticks of dynamite, we're this little piece of uranium that's just constantly being compressed down. And we have to receive a huge amount of pressure to reach critical mass to then
it's
game over.
Then it's game over. I mean, you have literally. If what is it like a small percentage of Americans own like over 50% of all the guns in the country, it's like that's mostly conservatives. Like they're eventually going to get it's going to get to the point where if leftists are actually going to start like doxing on a large scale just any sort of right-wing person, that you're going to start seeing that war break out. That's more on like the social side. I mean, when you get down to like more the gender war and stuff, you have just a rising number of men that just are so frustrated with the gender dynamic of, women are just, the Me Too, the again, the Gillette commercial again. It's just that tension is building up too, where you're just going to have a whole bunch of men that just are so tired of everything. Like if women are just going to Me Too any guy that looks at them. Because it can get to that point where just Me Too is going to get to the point that literally any guy at any moment.
The issue is the issue is not that. It's the issue. If it were just Me Too will get every guy will get hit with Me Too. I feel like there's at least an equality in slavery there. The real frustration hits when you realize there's some guys out there, they will never get Me Too. They could pull any.
That's what I'm saying. You're going to reach a critical point where so I don't know if you know about like the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, I know.
80-20 rule with men and women.
20% will never get Me Too, and that's what's frustrating.
But see, that 20% is shrinking though. It's becoming more of like the 90-10, then it's going to become the 95-5. And then once you reach that sort of, that high 90s versus the single digits.
Minorities, do you think they'll ever get Me Too'd?
It could become that. I mean, Asians are contributing to white supremacy nowadays.
Well,
okay, so and there's that black guy on Fox News that got called out as being having white privilege.
Yeah, so the lines start to blur in certain, like I said, kind of like with leftists are going to start doxing people on a large scale. They're going to start showing up at people's houses, people that probably have zero, almost, the one guy that puts on the build the wall tweet that has like 100 followers is going to get doxed. It's not just going to be the people that are because you're going to have whole armies of, I think, leftists. They're just going to go on Twitter, like finding anyone that tweets out build a wall and just start taking them out. See, I mean, you guys know about like the whole thing with Tucker Carlson, like they went to his house.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you start having that on a larger and larger scale to lower and lower people in terms of social status, that you start having a problem that people are going to start, okay, we're going to get our guns out.
It starts being problem when like you start doing that to guys with nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're crossing into that area of people that are really going to act like they are going to defend themselves. They are going to make sure you never want to encounter them again.
Scorched earth.
And the more people step up like that, the more people are willing to take that extra step.
Exactly. I mean, it's happened to Tucker Carlson. What's happening? But then if one of us even says one thing to any leftist, it's hell on earth. But then they do that to Tucker Carlson. We're kind of just like, hey, we understand. We'll talk about it, but no one's going to really do anything. It has to get to the point where you have, if Tucker Carlson were home and came out with a gun, then maybe something would actually happen. But it just happened, and we have decency on our side. We just we talk about it, we address it, but we're not actually reciprocating in any way.
What if there's like you have a yard, and you have outside your yard a sign that says warning no unauthorized access, bear traps are deployed.
I mean, there was
you live there, you know where the bear traps are, but the leftists like the people the SJWs, they come onto your yard and they get caught by bear traps, and you're like, I told them not to come here. I like to throw my bear traps wherever I want.
Right. I mean, I think now I don't know.
Yeah. Or they could just go on your property all night and chant, "Hey, hey, ho, ho." Literally, Hitler's got to go.
Because they're breaking the decibel.
Oh,
noise pollution levels.
Right.
About that.
Oh, yeah. Government officials love their zoning violations.
Yeah.
It's gonna
fight the SJWs.
Yeah. Right. Did you guys ever hear the story about the guy? Now, Babylon Bee stories come across so similar to real stories.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is real, but apparently there was a story of a guy, because I remember seeing it and I didn't even click on it. Some guy built a barbed wired fence around his yard in a neighborhood with kids, and the parents were like outraged, but he was like, it's my property.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Freaking barbed wire in the middle of a suburban neighborhood. He just, here's my property, you're not coming in. And it's like, that could start happening, but just more and more people being doxxed or attacked are going to start, you're going to just find that one guy or handful of guys that really don't care, that they're going to be on the news, they're going to be on social media, they're going to come out with their gun or with their bear traps or whatever, and that's when you start having that collapse.
It's just like bear traps, or like Playboy mines if you have a demolition.
But yeah, that's my prediction, is really just more of a social and cultural collapse first. Systemically, I think, I mean, then again, you know, am I a statist that I put faith in the system still being around? I hope not, but I do have some confidence in, like, the system itself is not going to collapse too easily.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. I mean, there is a collapse that could be coming sometime, but not anytime soon.
So, Amos, one last thing I want to mention was I just had this idea. You mentioned how, okay, the 80-20 is becoming the 10-90.
Right.
And it's probably going to get to like the 1%.
Exactly.
Like you have to be 1% for women to even like you. Do you believe this is kind of the horseshoe theory of how people are more into waifus than real women? Like, women's version of. Like,
I mean, I've heard
pig disgusting.
I've heard the argument when I've mentioned this to people. They say, "Well, what about the sex robots? Like the sex dolls and the sex robots that are going to be coming? Is that going to alleviate the tensions between the genders?"
We'll never breed again. Like, you know, if that happens, we'll never breed again.
But then it kind of makes you wonder: is that objectively, not speaking in any moral sense, but objectively, will that ever be a good thing? Is that going to bring to light the issues between the genders, or are we just going to placate, you know, allow ourselves to be placated to these new inventions, and then sort of be outbred by, let's say, other cultures?
But you know, those cultures, when they become more affluent, they're gonna buy sex robots too.
Correct. I mean, you have to keep in mind that the tension between men and women is so bad that guys are leaving the West, going east to places like Thailand to fuck ladyboys in the ass. That's a very good analogy of how bad it is between men and women.
You that look on your face, Amos, as like
I have a way of like putting in these little nuggets into some of our podcasts.
I have the feeling though that sex robots are absolutely haram. So yeah, they're going to outbreed us.
I don't know. I believe this on a very human level. Mm-hmm. Like we form partnerships, we form family units because that's the best thing available to us. It's the best thing that money can't buy. But the real flaw of it is that we have to put up with another human being, and that's tough. Like,
and when
real human relationships is at the end of the day, they're real humans. Like,
yeah, and when statistically being involved with another person is becoming a worse and worse idea, where I remember I tried calculating numbers. So I have a bit of a background. I've like played poker and stuff, and I've worked odds and stuff. I'm thinking, if I try to do this, if I try to work the odds, like I'm probably doing way better like playing a card game than I am marrying someone.
There's like, I think there's 4chan ones. We mentioned it's just like, look, if you have 1 in 4 chance of divorcing, it's not that he's too scared, and it's that you're bad at math.
Yeah.
I think that's more Western women though. You know, Jeff, congratulations again. But you know,
he knew what's up. He knew the market. He bought in early.
Okay, good. I mean, is she a Western girl? I don't know. Is she? Okay, well, right. Good job.
Girl.
Good job. He bought into the market before it was expensive. Like man. He knows his markets.
But I mean, it's a real risk. It's a real risk. But like you say, in Asia, East Asia, actually, I just had a discussion about this. South of Europe, like Italy and stuff like that, it hasn't gone crazy yet, and like the Caribbean and South America. So if you're pulling from those areas, I think you still got a chance.
So, but what I was saying is the hardest thing about real human relationships is you're dealing with real humans. Yeah, there's always going to be real humans with their own hopes and dreams. And when it comes to a sex robot, it doesn't have that. You don't have to deal with the inconvenience of it being a sentient being.
I mean, until they start, giving it AI or something.
You never want a true AI on a sex robot, because then why don't you just date a real human?
I mean, they would probably want to put in some intuitiveness so that there's some, because then you're going to get people that probably want
like an Alexa kind of AI.
No, it's you want a pseudo AI that
make me a sandwich sort of thing.
Predicts your user behavior and caters to user behavior.
I mean, you're going to be in the middle of having sex with it and be like, Alexa, what is the weather like outside? And then you just
what sometimes you gotta know. You want to know how look, you want to know the weather tomorrow, because you need to know how long you can fuck tonight. Sometimes you gotta fuck a bit earlier tomorrow morning. The weather's gonna be bad.
A sex robot with Google in it. It's perfect.
It gets dangerous too, because then there becomes all this manipulation. It's like when you want to search Hillary Clinton emails, it's going to autofill Hillary Clinton, excellent presidential candidate. People are just going to be.
Yes, I'm sure Hillary Clinton will still be running in 2024.
I would bet money on it, actually.
I agree.
I do predict Trump will win in 2020, though.
Yes,
I second that. Yeah.
I mean, totally. I try to placate a little bit to libertarians and say, well, I think he does some good things, and from a masculinity perspective, he's a great president. From a political standpoint, yeah, there's my libertarian flares up and kind of goes, well, the money and the
also as Pakistani, as your hat indicates, we have the first meme president.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, I'll try to look at it, I'll try to go into Ben Shapiro mode and good Trump, bad Trump, and
a lot of times I look at from the perspective of what's the implications of things he's going to do.
Right. For
example, what's her face? She's
Pelosi.
No, she's Supreme Court judge.
Ginsburg.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I'm not celebrating her death. Let's put it this way.
She's not dead yet.
From a subjective point of view, she doesn't have long. Which means that if you didn't have Trump, that's 2 seats that would have gone to Hillary.
Correct. Yeah, that's going to be his legacy. He's swayed the court conservative, at least for the next generation.
Yeah, so sometimes you can't be looking at the ideals. You got to look at pragmatically what has happened. And yes, unless Ginsburg somehow survives another 2 years on stage 4 lung cancer, I'm not. Once again, I'm not celebrating a woman's death. I'm just saying it's not likely. Statistically,
they're making a movie about her
in history as the president with 3 Supreme Court nominees.
Picks. Yeah. I mean, yeah. they're making a movie about her, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, they're kind of making out of her be like this huge feminist hero. However that's going to go. But I'm surprised we're hitting our 2-hour mark here. But let's. I'm
an interesting man with many things to talk about.
I'm glad. I say
new book, New 3 Kingdoms arise.
No, definitely. Hey, if you ever do make it, we'll straight up have you on here and just talk about it.
It'll be awesome.
Oh, by the way, could I re-upload after this comes out? Can I re-upload this to our channel?
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll
just put the links, the social media stuff below. Yeah. We're all sharing.
Man.
We'll also wait a week, maybe.
Yeah, because he's not monetized at this point, so it's not like you're taking revenue from us.
I'm getting all those. No, you can monetize when you're under 1,000.
And it's not like this video is not going to get demonetized. Due to Winnie the Pooh.
Fucking lady boys in the ass, hand fisting from Winnie the Pooh.
The collapse of China. Anyways, I Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Definitely a really fun episode. I'd say it's the best.
You who's day drinking.
Bless you.
Best one of the year so far. With
I think we're setting from January onwards.
I mean, you guys are setting the mark pretty high here with a fun stream. But yeah, I wanted to thank Bill and Jeff of the Asian Capitalists of coming on, our biggest guest to date. What's that?
I would like to also thank Amos and the Brooks for having us, because it's been a great time talking with you, and I got my book idea from you guys from this conversation.
Yeah,
we'll take a little section in the forward.
Yeah.
What day is it today? Like January
20th,
2019.
19, never forget.
2020 is when the book's coming out.
Yes.
We'll take our cut off the top 10%.
We'll write the preface and the foreword.
Yeah. Collaboration.
Exactly.
Project.
Exactly. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Thanks, Brooke, for joining me today as well. This is our 40th episode. Probably, yeah, it's the best one to date. I'd say for our show. We've had a lot of guests on. You've definitely completely skewed our gender equality. We had 3 women out of the 8 guests that we had. Now we have 2 more guys. So 3 out of 10, 30%.
You gotta retoxify the masculinity.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. This is the best we can get.
Move over, Gillette. The Asian capitalists are here.
Exactly. But this was again our 40th episode. Check out. I've got the channel to the Asian Capitalists below. Of course, I'll add in all your guys' social media links as well.
And your links will be below for your channel.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And, thank you, Shitlord Preachers.
Shitlord Preachers, man.
I was just kind of pausing because you're like, I had to get around that, like to even like
the name.
Like, am I allowed to say that on there?
No, yeah. I mean, I pretty much got the inspiration from. I know there was like a something Saints podcast. There was like a Saints podcast with some guys. There was like the Drunken Peasants, and I was like, we're the Shitlord Preachers.
Yeah,
like, just
it's a great
like
name.
that.
Great name.
Yeah. But yeah, thank everyone for joining us. We are, of course, going to be back again next week. At our usual time. We had to switch for the Asian Capitalists, but it's definitely still a fun show. We'll be back again next Sunday, 11 a.m. Central Time, where it's just Brooke and myself. We have no guests lined up yet, but we will have guests, other guests in the coming weeks as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you guys next week.
Thanks for watching, guys.